new halachic ideas, as we learned from the Vilna Gaon, Torah Eretz Yisrael, even if they are written on the books, they have no legitimacy. If, let's say, and this has happened, great rabbis of the 20th century would come here and tell us that, against everything we could tell from the classic sources, that there is such an idea of land for peace, which and it's when you tell it to high school students, they understand that the idea is a complete and utter nonsense. How could it be halachically justifiable? Oh, pikuach nefesh, everything is justifiable with pikuach nefesh. It's to save lives, so you can even violate the entire Torah, which you can't. But assuming that, imagine if we were to find in halachic writings that such an idea that we engage in this land for peace. Murderers promise to leave us alone if we would just surrender parts of Eretz Israel, for which we have already been bidden to risk our lives and fight. Then we could just say that there is no legitimacy to that. We have to be able to say that, especially now today. Books are being written about war ethics, battlefield rules, taking spoils, international law, collateral damage, all the things we've been talking about right now. I wanted to explain this to a scholar in America who apparently knows these things. Yes, he's very good at finding sources, but I think he's being a little bit obscurantist in this regard. Just because rabbis of the 19th century, let's say, had a hava, maybe Jews or a Jewish state or Jewish army has to subscribe to so-called international law, and he wrote in a book. It doesn't mean that that idea has any legitimacy in Talmudic law because it is so ridiculous. Yes, he might have had temporary insanity, whatever it could be. There are some ideas that we have to go and say, yes, these are new ideas. They have no basis in Torah law. They sound good, but they're just halachic noise, and we have to be able to dismiss them. And especially the ideas that are relating to the ethics of war that are foreign and suicidal. Now, I remember a few years ago, after the Hitnat and things, they're already the Arabs in Gaza were beginning to cause us problems. And I remember speaking to someone and asking, okay, wasn't that part of the plan? If Chas v'Shalom, they decide to do something to us, then we're going to march in there and really give it to them because they're a foreign country and they're attacking us. Isn't that what's supposed to be? Or why does it have to be that everything has to be proportional? We always have to hold back in responding. And he'd always tell me like a moron, those are just the rules of the game, the rules of the game. Where these rules of the game come from, they're dictated by the Americans or the Assyrians, or they're just, okay, people subscribe to them. The people in charge have a new Torah and they will die. Unlike, let's say, those of us who have the Torah forthwith, we'll see what the Rambam says about how you're supposed to live. Sometimes there are certain averas you are allowed to do if you're being forced to do them by, let's say, a Gentile oppressor or by health, for example. And then there's some certain things you can't do. So he said, these people, they just have rules. That's the rules. You can't do this. We can't do this. Why? Because we can't do that. We can't do these things. And now we've created our own rules. By we, I mean the Jewish people on a whole, and the people apparently running the show against our better judgment, and the dictators beyond this country. So they're making rules. So we have to stick to these rules. And then I realized that even decent rabbinical types who should know better are actually playing along with these rules as though these were halachas. And I'm thinking, had they ever sat down and read this thing? Like Reverend Lovejoy, he holds up his Bible, the Havdil, and he says, you ever sat down or actually read this thing? So I have a question. Has anybody actually sat down and read, let's say, just for an example, the laws of kings and wars by the Rambam, which, by the way, like most things from the Rambam and Halacha, you could find in Shas. The sources are there; they're available, and yes, we could argue the fine details, but the general idea is there, and you could read the Tanakh. You can understand these things. I was figuring that perhaps, like we said before, regarding the laws with visiting the Temple Mount today, perhaps we just have to correct the Rambam. Perhaps they mean to say that we have a different code. So I'll have here in black what the Rambam says, and perhaps how it should be updated. That's over here, the Girsa Mitukenet, as it says here. So I'll read a few of these laws that most people should know about. Here it talks about conquest. By the way, it's very funny. There's a concept in Western military law called occupation. Occupation is when the conquering people decide to take up residence and administration in a foreign country. So if the Germans were great at this. Germans left Germany and they go conquer France, and then they take over France and they set up their own puppet government and they have a police force and their own army in France. That's called an occupation. And the Americans responded by occupying, what was it, Iceland? They needed a place, so they sent their military to take over the place. That's an occupation. Why? Because Americans have no business in Iceland. They could barely speak in whatever Norwegian language they're speaking there in Iceland. And the Germans have no business in France because they belong in Germany and not in France. So those are occupiers. Uh, in Hebrew, we have no such word. Modern Hebrew needed a word for this, so they used this Hebrew word, an ancient Hebrew word, kibush, which means conquest. The problem is when, let's say, the Rambam and Chazal were using this, they were just talking about reclaiming lands that were always traditionally Jewish. Don't forget, Joshua's conquest of the land of Israel was reclaiming basically land that had been entitled to Abraham and his children and grandchildren and great grandchildren hundreds of years before that. Let us not forget that as we try to show beforehand. Joshua wasn't coming out of nowhere. He was reclaiming what was always ours. Okay, so that's conquest. Here it says, whatever lands, king of Israel, okay? Sorry, Israel conquers by its king according to a Beit Din, whether the Beit Din authorized it before the fact or after the fact, as the Rambam indicates the different halachas. So this is considered conquest by the masses. That means of the Jewish community. And it counts as land of Israel, just like Joshua conquest. Joshua was the original conqueror, and it would be that even though he was only around for one generation, later kings would come and conquer more. That would be considered a continuation of whatever Joshua conquered. That's why King David basically finished the job. And the judges, every here and there, they either held on to land that had been lost or expanded a little bit. Either way, that happened later in history. There's a few conquering kings of Judah. For example, Yerovam II is credited also for being a great conqueror on behalf of the Jewish people, and that was considered also kibush rabim. Okay. My point is that it says the Melech does this. In Trumas and Meisrus, the Rambam explains what does that have to do? What does Eretz Yisrael mean? We saw this 2 years ago. It means that's where you keep the mitzvahs. And he says here, Eretz Yisrael, Makom, here Eretz Koveshotan, Melech Yisrael, Oshofet Onavi, Midat Rov Yisrael. I love this line. Because the Rambam says, Eretz Yisrael, when we talk about it, it doesn't necessarily have to be the king. It's also the king or the shofet. A shofet is a natural, organic leader of the kind, many of whom are described in the book of Judges. It doesn't, not necessarily appointed by the Navi, more like God allows them to arise. Basically, any popular Jewish leader, I think that the prime ministers of the current state of Israel certainly have this role, if not even a greater role than the shofet, not because they're religious or they're tzaddikim, but because they just happen to be the ones in charge. Or a navi. Sometimes the Jewish people are led by a navi. Some naviim were shoftim, for example, Shmuel navi, Gidon, and they wanted to make him king. Sometimes there's a little bit of overlap. The point is, the Jewish leader, Midat Rov Yisrael, it's done on behalf, with the knowledge of most of Israel. Nikra kibush rabim. So that's how you do it. And then he continues, there's exceptions to this. So what if an individual or a family or a tribe went and conquered some land for themselves, even if it was land that was given to Abraham, land that Abraham originally had. That's not considered Eretz Yisrael. Not all the mitzvahs apply there. And that's why Joshua divided up the land, even the parts that he technically didn't control at that point. Why? That way it wouldn't be considered a kibush yachid when each tribe would eventually go and conquer some more of it. So even Dan, when they conquered what became the land of Dan, in the northernmost extreme of the land of Israel at the time, wait a minute, that wasn't given to them. They were given the area around Tel Aviv. Everything from the west of Beit Shemesh until Tel Aviv was supposed to be theirs, old Jaffa. But they just had a problem holding on to it. And then it says, so they went north, totally disconnected. How do they do that? The answer, because Joshua set it up already, that whatever part would be conquered, and this land is already theirs to take. So it'd be considered part of the Kibush Rabim and part of Eretz Yisrael, the Chol Davar, as they say. And here it says that King David actually did things a little bit out of order. There are some places that he conquered before he finished his conquest of all of Eretz Yisrael, so that didn't count. And yeah, so there we go. This is the precedent. What do we see here from the Rambam? That is basically the role of the Jewish king, and if not a Jewish king, then the Shofet or the Navi or whoever is the national leader. It's his job to expand Israel's borders, to encompass that which was promised to the forefathers, that which Moses was told by God to tell them to conquer. But the problem is, nowadays we see it's not the case, and there's some even I would guess quite a lot of rabbinic figures who might be considered poskim. After all, people asking questions regarding Shabbos and Kashrus and Nida and things like that, who are not of this opinion. So I've updated the Rambam to read as follows: Ein Yisrael lichbo shum eretz ba'olam. Okay, Israel means Jews are not to conquer any land at all in this world. Afilu b'gvulot eretz Canaan hamuvtachat l'avot. Even within the borders of the land of Canaan that was promised to the forefathers. The Kal v'chomer, ein legaresh bisham shum goyim shonei Yisrael. One should not drive out from there any Gentiles who are the haters of Israel, enemies of Israel. B'zeh shetimsa shekein asu Yoshua v'David ushar shofatim ulachim shekavshu artzot v'yishu goyim. And that which you might find in your history books, in your Bible, for example, that is exactly what, let's say, Joshua and David and other prophets and kings did. What did they do? They conquered lands and they drove out the Gentiles there. What they're doing was against the Torah, and it's also to our shame that they did so. Okay, so I think that this halacha more accurately describes the way many Jews, especially of the blue team stripe, actually believe today. So if you'd ask them what's the halacha, they'd point this. So let's add it to the Rambam in place of all these other, I guess, politically incorrect halachas that for some reason made into the Mishnah Torah. The Rambam continues, he was talking about making war with the enemy. The enemy is besieged, getting ready to surround them. We tell them, here's your conditions. If you want peace, you have to surrender on our terms. It says if they do not accept the surrender, Ishlimu means make peace. It's not that we negotiate something against the Torah. It means it has to be entirely on terms, our terms, according to the Torah. Or they accepted the surrender, but they did not accept to keep the 7 mitzvahs. By the way, we are technically allowed to keep Gentiles in the land of Israel only when the Yov is around, according to Rambam, and even then, only if they are Yeri Toshav. That means they accept the 7 mitzvahs. And even though we saw the Ravad had a totally different approach to how that halacha should be interpreted, the halacha is mentioned in Shas, they all agree that the only type of Gentile we can have persist in our midst is one who is at least keeping Sheva mitzvahs. If you have, let's say, Gentiles who are murderers, and they're sworn murderers, and they declare their intention to murder us all the time, of course, no Risho would say that we are able to allow these people to stay in the land of Israel. We have to fight them, and we have to get rid of them. That is so clear in the halacha, but whatever, it's been forgotten also. So it says we make war with them. They don't accept the surrender exactly as we say, so we make war with them. And we kill all the adult males. And we also take as spoils all of their property and their children. But we do not kill any woman or child. I mean, if it's collateral damage, of course, we don't. The Rambam never said, that we have to go out of our way to make sure not to kill them, especially if their own adult males are bringing about their own deaths. But we don't go out of our way to kill women and children, as it says in this verse in Devarim, and it even refers to male children. Okay, so all women are saved, and male children. How do you know he's a gadol? What's the line? Apparently, bar mitzvah, because the laws of gadlut and patnut, that is, how to decide if a person is treated as an adult or not, is with regards to bar mitzvah. That's across the board. So, with regards to liability for keeping the commandments, both for Jew and Gentile, and also liability for committing ritual sins like Gilur Riles and things like that, That's the traditional age cutoff. Once a Jewish boy has reached the age of 13, he's considered a halachic adult and can stand trial and be held accountable for all manner of crimes and sins. So too with Gentiles. So basically, all the children, as far as I know, younger than bar mitzvah. But the problem is, once again, this halacha doesn't seem to fit what I guess many rabbis, at least, or those who profess to know the halacha or discuss these things, say. So let's update the Rambam. The Rambam says, "Mishtalim b'chol kochenu lo lachem elin kemu l'frimanu." We endeavor with all our might not to have to make war unless we are forced to do so. Vorgin rak zaporim gedolim no say neshek shekvar nisu l'flabanu. And we only kill adult males who are bearing arms, who have already tried to harm us. Not that they're threatening, but only once they've shot at us, let's say. It is also forbidden to take from them any spoils or booty. Mamon v'taf, whether possessions or children. Sheman yeh k'mohem, lest we be like them, because that's what they do, so you shouldn't do that. Shederech borut hi la'rog me'ever l'tzoret. It's considered lowly. I guess it's boorish to kill more than absolutely necessary. And taking the spoils of the enemy is not our way. It's also a great sin to bring about the death of any woman or child in war. Therefore, even if their soldiers hide among their male soldiers, hide among their women and their children, we may not make war with them. Okay, lest we bring about the death of the women and the children. And even those males who we don't know if they're actually fighting against us. So here the Rambam says what most people believe is the halacha. So let's put it into the Rambam's words. Let's write in the book and it'll be the halacha to make them happy, that we are not allowed to make war if it's going to cause women, children, and even adult males who maybe they're not there to fight us. We can't prove that they were there to kill us. So we have to be suffix, be careful with this, and not attempt any form of war nearby. And even if denying our sword, that means this is an expression meaning we choose not to shoot, okay, will bring us to fail in this war or to lose this war, kedaihu, it was worth it. It is better that we fall into the hands of the enemy than to bring about the death of one of them, which unjustly. And this matter, which Chazal called the purity of arms, so that's a law that Moses received from Sinai. And our rabbis said much in its praise and its importance. And if somehow some of them fall into our hands as captives, I have to switch this. Sorry about that. Can't believe it. Rambam's not what it used to be. It is our duty. We are obligated to feed them and clothe them and to protect them from all harm. And also to house them in, I guess basically we have penitentiary, until we free them to go back to their cities as they once were, as originally they were. And if they make war with us again, that is what's theirs is in front of them. Means that is their right. Have we not also taken their land and subjugated them? So they have the right to fight back. And hopefully they'll learn how to behave toward our brethren, our Jewish brethren who are captives in their hands. They're hostages. They saw how well we treated their captives, so they should learn to treat our captives the same way. We shamu tova tacha tova, and hopefully they'll repay good with good. So this is an updated Rambam. I think we should put it in there. I'm sure that there were people in the area who really believed this up until Simchas Torah. Kishitzarina al ir l'tofsa. The Rambam, at least in the old editions, perhaps this needs correcting, says that when we make a siege around the city in order to take it down, we're only surrounded on three sides, not four sides. Leave space for those who want to flee or those who want to save themselves. Namar, as it says, they massed against Midian as the Lord commanded Moses. What does that mean? It means that they only surround Midian on three sides. And that's explained, by the way. Someone asked, it says that in this war, they smote all the males of Midian. Yet, just a few generations later, Midian's causing trouble for Am Yisrael again. Yes, because when Moses sent the 12,000 men, thousands of each tribe, to punish Midian and take God's vengeance upon those who brought about the death of 20,000 or 22,000 Jews of Israel, Jewish people of Israel. So it must have been that some of them escaped in this war. Okay. So this talks about laying a siege. And the Rambam's assumption is that we do lay siege at places, but nowadays we know that this isn't so kosher. So we're going to update the Rambam over here. It says here, it was the way of the kings of the nations back then that they would besiege a city in order to take it. They would surround it on four sides, its four sides. And they left no place for anybody who wanted to escape or to save his life. The guy ad mot here with the tet. It says here that they also would deprive them of food and water so they would fall into starvation and they become weakened until the city would collapse. Okay. But our sages commanded us not to do like this. Rather, we should treat our enemy with compassion. If a Jewish army would surround an enemy city, it's still incumbent upon this Jewish army to provide the Gentiles within with food and water. And also to allow them some means of acquiring more weapons and money. And also the Israelite army should tell the enemy what days and what hours of the day they intend to attack them. And exactly where, what places there's going to be a war and when. Because it says in Mishlei that the ways of the Torah are pleasant. So this is what I guess people are doing. So the halacha apparently follows what they do, because what they're doing is exactly like the halacha, and this makes sense. So hold on 1 second. Who's here? Is there a question there? So I have to check the chat. No, okay. Fine, let's continue. Here you have a passage that we've seen before, the Rambam's ethic of war. how you're supposed to fight. Okay, once the war actually starts. Before he wrote about who's exempt from war, at least in certain situations, who's told to go home and not to fight. Who's give us a moment. Rambam says, once he's in the heat of battle, he should rely on the hope of Israel and his Savior in times of trouble. He should know that it's for the sake of the unity of God's name that he is making war. He should put his soul in his hand. That means disregard his own safety, shouldn't fear. Should not think about his wife or his children. Should just forget about them entirely. He should be free of everything. Okay? Complete zen, so he could put his mind to the war. Whoever starts thinking, he lets his mind wander, not wind wander. He lets his mind wander. And then he starts to cause himself to panic. Over below Tase. He is violating a negative commandments. Nemar al yirach levavchem al tiru al tapazu al tartzu b'pneihem. Says, don't let your hearts become soft. Do not fear. Do not tremble from before him. Not only that, the entire blood of Israel means the lives of the nation are hanging on his neck. Okay? That means they're relying on him. It depends on him. And if he's not victorious, or he did not make war with his entire heart and soul, it's like he spilled the blood of all of them, all the Jewish people. He should not melt his the heart of his brothers like his own melted hearts. Says in the words of the prophets, cursed is the man who makes the work of God, okay, Rabbi does it falsely. And cursed is the man who deprives his sword of blood. Whoever fights the war, his entire heart, without any fear, and his entire intent is to sanctify God's name. That's all it is. He's guaranteed that he will not be harmed, and no bad will come to him. He will build a proper house in Israel. And he'll merit for him and his children forever. He will even merit life in the next world. It says, this is Abigail promised King David. He was a great warrior. He said, you're guaranteed God will make you a great house, a dynasty. Because it's the Lords of wars that my Lord fights. Lord with the capital L over here. This is not Shem Adnuk. This is, he's referring to the king as for Lord. We're all lotim, let's say, there no bad shall be found in your midst, your entire life. And the soul of my Lord will be bound up in the binds of life with the Lord your God. So that's the Rambam's old ethic. And as you know, this type of thing doesn't fly today. And as a matter of fact, you've probably heard, or it could probably show you others who would disagree with this, and they really believe that that's halacha. So let's update the halacha for them. Once someone actually gets into the heat of battle, he is core taviyat the hoka bein-leumi. You should always remember international law. He should know that it's for the sake of modern day enlightenment that we act. He should actually be very concerned. He should fear. Lest he violate this law and kill or destroy more than necessary. He should think about his wife and his children. How ashamed they will be of him that he had to kill others non-Jews. You should remember them all the time. The Gamius core at Torah Neshek Moshe B'Yarnim. You should also remember all the halachas concerning the purity of arms, as we explained above. Okay. Even if he were to return home in peace after the war, he'll still be brought to stand trial in those courts, not based in, on everything he did. By the way, actually got a message. They said, yes, that's what the State Department's actually planning to do. If you are served in the IDF, they're going to make it trouble for you just if you want to travel internationally, because now you're a war criminal. Whenever starts thinking too much, he lets his mind wander during the war. When he starts to panic, he is fulfilling a positive commandment. Sorry, there's a good missing over here. It says you shall be insane from that which you see. Okay? From the sight of your eyes, which you see. This is a little bit redundant. That which your eyes see. These are those laws that you make up. Asher tireh, that you see. Marinecha, what your eyes are seeing. Asher tireh, that you see. Zed tarbus hagoyim shataru ed derech hatikshor. This is the culture that we pick up from the Gentiles that you get through the mass media. Okay, so we pick up, we get our Torah from them. The low ode, Ella Shekol Demeho Yev Tulim B'Tzavaro. He should also know that the entire lives of the enemy depend on him. He's playing with their lives. So if he's victorious, he made war with his entire heart and soul. So now he's spilled the blood of the enemy. He wasn't supposed to do that. Look what they made him do. It is not for our soldiers to bring shame and disgrace upon us. It's better that we be slaughtered en masse, or that we go into exile another 7 times, than to kill those who rise against us. They're fighting, they're rising against us. It's better that we just lay down our arms. And whoever fights only because he has to, or it's as though he is being forced to by a demon, and his intention is only to keep their judges and their officers, the various regimes, happy. Still, no, there's no guarantees. We still can't promise that bad things won't happen to him and that he won't find harm, or that he'll be able to have even a decent family to raise afterwards. That he'll have forever. We also can't promise that he'll have sharing the world to come. Why? Because he fought in the war, he will be called a Jew murderer. Not only that, they will punish him. Okay? These other nations will punish him because he did not, fulfill their requirements. And his intention should always be to find favor in the eyes of the children of Japheth and Esav and Ishmael. This is a rabbinic reference to the Europeans and the Western powers and the Muslim world. Because we get our parnasa from them. We get our livelihood from them. If we would upset the Americans, the state of Israel's economy would collapse. And from them, we have to learn proper behavior and also our ethics. So I think that, Baruch Hashem, I should send a copy to certain rabbis who we were listening to recently, and we had to argue with them and show them that I guess this is what the Rambam meant to say as opposed to this. Let's continue. This is talking about what do you do when you have a conflict. You're being told to do something that's against the Torah. So there's a few cases where the Rambam discusses this. This is conclusive, but let's just have see a sampling of with regards to our priorities in keeping the Torah. Let's say you have a Navi, a real life prophet of God. They tell us things that don't necessarily have to do with the mitzvahs. They tell us to go somewhere or don't go somewhere. They say wage war today or don't wage war today. Benu chomazo o al tivnuha. Build this wall or don't build this wall. Mitzvah lishmolo. It's a commandment of God to listen to the Navi. Normally, you don't have to listen. The Chacham comes and tells you this. I don't think we should make war today. I think we should make war today. You don't listen to him. But the Navi says, in the name of God, things that seem innocuous, you have to listen. Well, whoever violates what the Navi says, he is liable to death at the hands of heaven. So be the man who does not listen to my words. This is what God says, that the prophet will say in my name, I will have a reckoning with him. It means God himself will take care of it. You have to listen to God's Navi. Let's say a Navi, we know he's a Navi. He already has a reputation as a Navi. He tells us to actually violate one of the mitzvahs of the Torah. He tells us, eat pig. Okay? Or a few mitzvahs. He says, eat pig, and also, some other, pick your avera. Bein kalot, bein chamurot, whatever, light averos or extreme averos. What are the light ones? Ones that don't have punishments or minor punishments like lashes, whereas chamurot are the ones that certain types of excision or the death penalty. You got a question coming in? No, okay, it's not relevant to this. Lefisha mitzvah lishmolo. So if it's as long as it's a one-time thing, just today, Nabi said, today we're violating this commandment. it is a mitzvah for us to listen to the Navi. This is what we learned from the earlier sages, a tradition. With all regards to all the prohibitions, Navi tells you to violate them, so we violate them, just like Elijah did at the Mount Carmel, where he offered sacrifice beyond the temple. Pretty bad avera, as long as we're not doing idolatry, worshiping foreign gods. So it's endorsed by the Torah if the Navi tells us. And like it says, one time dispensation, just like Eliyahu did at Mount Carmel. Okay. And it also says here, okay, it says here, fine. So you listen to the Navi. When the Navi can basically tell you one time, violate what the Torah says. In Hilchos Mamre, it talks about Kiru Avei. The person has to obey his parents. Well, if his parents tell him to do something. Well, here it says, Mishamar lo aviv lavar divrei Torah. One who's a father, that's just an example. The mother also would fall into this category. The father told him, violate the Sabbath. Bein shamar lo lavar al mitzvot lo taseh o vatel mitzvot aseh. Whether it's the father told him, you know what, violate the Sabbath, or don't put on tefillin, filu shel divrehim, or even prohibitions or commandments of the sages. He says, you know what, carry in the Carmelites. Okay? Or don't make an Eruv in your apartment building so that you could carry in the hallway. That's a Rosh Hashanah, technically speaking. You still have to make an Eruv there. Or he tells you don't light your Hanukkah candles. He should not listen to his father or his mother. It says a man should fear his parents or revere his father and his mother, and also keep my Sabbaths. You are all, parents and children, obligated in my honor. So God says you can't violate any of the Torah to keep, obey your parents. So if it's between God and parents, God wins. Next, the Torah says that we are commanded to sanctify God's name. What's sanctifying God's name? It means that if Gentiles come, or someone else tries to force a Jew to violate any commands of the Torah or kill us, so we are allowed to violate commandment. It says, Jew, eat the ham sandwich or I'm going to kill you. So if you know he will relent. If you eat the sandwich, eat the sandwich. He says, yeah, that refers to other mitzvahs, but there are three exceptions. Avodah Zarah, Giluras, and Shpichus Damim. Okay. That is all the Hari Val Yavar. Better to get killed than to violate them. And he also says that the exception, that's talking about Shmad. When a person was able to just do the Avera and save his life, that's not when it's, let's say, Shasa Shmad. What's Shasa Shmad? Holocaust time. When you know that there's a national entity that is trying to kill all the Jews. And by the way, that's now. We have a Shasa Shmad going on right now. What happens if you have a wicked king like Nebuchadnezzar and his company who would have a Shmad on Am Yisrael? They want to destroy the entire Torah or any just a mitzvah, a Shmad against a particular mitzvah. Yehari Val Yavar also, he should give his life and not violate this commandment. Okay. What about if the king tells you to do something? King says to violate the Torah. Whoever rebels against the king, so the Melech is permitted to kill him. The Melech doesn't have to kill him. That's the king. Let's say he told one of the people, you can't go to this place. King says, no vacationing in Florida. You. The king could even say, you can't leave your house. Guy leaves his house, so the king could kill him. Okay, doesn't have to. By the way, this is another example where it says who had this power. Joshua had this power because Joshua was a king. But a person who abrogates the decree of the king so that he can engross himself in commandments. But he is exempt. The king said, you know what? No tefillin, no Hanukkah candles even. So the guy doesn't have to listen to the king. And the king can't hurt him. Divrei Rav, Divrei Ha'eved, Divrei Rav Kod Min. In regards to the words of the master, that's God, and the words of the servant, that's the king. He's a servant of God. Divrei Rav Kod Min. God's words take precedent. So of course, and if the king says abrogate some sort of commandment, we do not listen to the king. So this is not exactly what you would think right now. There's some guys are enlisting in the IDF, and they're given orders. And one of the most important things I'm told, I remember this became an issue before the Gaza disengagement. You have to obey orders. Look, there were even some great rabbis who said the most important thing, despite what's going on, how terrible it is that there's going to be this destruction of Jewish Gaza, destruction of Jewish homes, tremendous property loss, and also retreat from Jewish territory when there was no reason. The enemy wasn't even fighting. Okay, and handing over the area. You know what happened to the area that the Jews left in Tufshin Sanatay? Yeah, that's where the enemy attacked from 18 years later. So all it took was 18 years for them to get, use that as base, and now they're fighting just to retake it. So they said that you have to soldiers have to obey orders no matter what. So let's update this. If you want, I could point to that rabbis who actually believe that this is what should have been written in the Rambam. So let's say. It says here that the Chalutzei Tzava, that's the soldiers of Israel, have to obey all orders given by the Sarei Tzava, those are the officers of the army and their commanders. If they commanded the soldiers to violate any of the prohibitions of the Torah, they tell them to kidnap Jews. Kidnapping Jews is forbidden. Normally it's an Isser Misa. Okay? You can't kidnap Jews. But if they tell you kidnap these Jews and throw them in jail for things they didn't do wrong, or to destroy Jewish houses or Jewish cities, they should fulfill their orders with clear heart and without any questions. And of course, this includes if the commanders would tell them to abrogate their most basic role, which is what? As soldiers, let's say they tell the soldiers to do the exact opposite of saving the Jews from trouble. It means fighting the Clemens Mitzvah to protect the Jewish people, or conquering the land of Israel. They told them to do the exact opposite, harm the Jewish people, and give over land to the enemy, which is the opposite of Jewish conquest. They should listen to them. And this way, the power or the strength of the commanders and the officers of the military is greater than that of a Jewish prophet. Okay? A Navi can tell us to violate a thou shalt not of the Torah, or to abrogate a positive command of the Torah with a hora'at shah, one-time dispensation. And only after this Navi has actually become a certified, bona fide Navi, who we know is speaking God's name. But with regards to the commanders and the military officers, we do everything they tell us to do, even if they are heretics and Epicureans, and they themselves are violating every command of the Torah just to spite God, like many of the commanders today, and other people like that. Reading Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam has a list, minim aperkorsim, portion in the Tzibur, and the rest of them. Even if you have the worstest people in the world are your commanders, you have to listen to them. They are better than the Nevi'im. And of course, they have more power, and you have to listen to them more than you even would the king. Okay? So I'm glad we were able to fix these Rambams. I think I'm really serious about this. If we, like I said, I have a short list of rabbinic figures with whom we have had a little bit discussions, or we've argued about this previously. So I think that they would have much benefit from an addition to the Rambam that says this.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.